And then out came the news item, Penny invents death ray. No, he didn't.
Unfortunately, I can't track down the article Evan is describing to confirm this story. Nothing like it shows up in a search of pages past, that's the online newspaper archive. I can believe this kind of mistake could happen, though, and it's a good explanation for the reports of Victor detonating buried explosives. But it only solves part of the story. It doesn't explain the accounts of Victor setting matchbooks on fire. Multiple people talk about Victor setting matchbooks on fire at a distance using some kind of device. And it doesn't sound like that was something he was doing using a remote control. Even Penny thinks this might have been another radio experiment his dad was working on.
He tried to build this 2 kilowatt transmitter. He would set up a box of matches in front of the transmitting cone. Lost that box of matches.
Now, 2 kilowatts was a hell of a lot of electricity for an amateur to be playing around with back in those days. Potentially, it's a dangerous amount of energy, but it depends on the situation. There's a good chance that you have a 2 kilowatt heater in your house, and that's perfectly safe because the power's being distributed over a large area. But if you concentrate the energy, most of it's in storage. A 2 kilowatt industrial laser will cut clean through a sheet of metal. We don't have any blueprints, so we don't know how Victor Penny's 2 kilowatt device worked. Based on Evan's story, it sounds a lot more powerful than your average radio transmitter.
So he was doing all sorts of experiments until he burnt his first wife's leg with this. So 2 kilowatts concentrated in a couple of square inches on her leg. She got 3rd-degree burns on her leg.
Again, I put this to a few experts, and they had some reservations with these stories of exploding matchbooks and burned wires. Here's Professor Rodney Vaughan again.
That would take an enormous amount of radio power. If it was a radio power burn, it takes an enormous amount of power to get gas, if you like, hot enough to burn. Much more than a microwave oven, and you'd have to have a very, very direct antenna which would focus it at a place, and that antenna would have to be really big.
Like how big?
I'd have to do some calculations, but I couldn't see it being less than maybe 5 or 10 meters in diameter, something like that. Something that people would do for the demonstration.
Professor Vaughan actually wondered if Victor's wife might have been burned by an ordinary electric shock rather than anything exotic. As for the story of setting matchbooks on fire, is that possible?
You'd need a massive amount of power, even a box of matches. You can pop it into your microwave if you like, and just try zapping it for a while.
Again, for the sake of RNZ's legal department, please do not try this experiment at home.
It could well if you get enough phosphorus from the match heads and put it in a big bundle and run it in the microwave long enough. It probably would burst into flames ultimately just from the heat that it absorbs from the microwave. But you can't get that kind of power density 16 feet away from a source. Once you're 16 feet away from it, so your power isn't fractions like thousands or even millions of what the source power is. In other words, the microwave magnetron. So that's extremely unlikely to happen.
It's even more unlikely when you consider that Victor Penny wasn't even using microwaves to burn matches. He was using ordinary radio waves, which carry far less energy. And these stories sound even more dubious when you realise none of them seem to come from eyewitnesses. As the Evening Post reported, Auckland residents connected with Mr. Penny in the various experiments he has conducted in radio and other electrical work have heard allegations of a mysterious force said to have been discovered by him in the course of his researches. Nobody can be found, however, who has ever seen the force exhibited, although rumours as to its effects are numerous. To be clear, I'm not saying Victor Penny never set a matchbook on fire, and neither is Rodney Vaughan. We don't have the blueprints for Victor's juiced-up radio transmitter, so it's hard to say for sure what it was and wasn't capable of. But as Professor Rodney Vaughan explains, there are less dramatic explanations for how a matchbook might spontaneously combust.
Could have been a case of the matchbox being sitting on some of the equipment that was just getting really hot. The tubes and that sort of stuff, and the electronics, the drives from the power supply, they could have got hot. And he just happened to have a box of matches sitting on particularly hot spot. Maybe that could cause perhaps speculation.
Okay, so I know this podcast has death ray in the title, so let's talk a bit more about death rays. It actually helps explain the story if you understand a bit of the wider context. In the 1930s, a lot of people were talking about the possibility of weaponizing high-power rays of energy. And it was also in popular culture. Death rays were a big feature of old sci-fi comics like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, which started being published in the 1920s and 30s. Way back in the 1890s, there was the famous heat ray from The War of the Worlds, later famously adapted into a radio play by Orson Welles.
Coming this way, Doug. About 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty.
But it wasn't just science fiction. Some of the world's top scientists are talking seriously about these weapons, including Dr. Nikola Tesla, a famous early pioneer of electricity. For the final few decades of his life, Dr. Tesla told anyone who would listen about his efforts to invent something he called teleforce. But the newspapers described it as a death beam, because, it's a better name. A year before Victor Penny's death ray hit the headlines in New Zealand, the New York Times published an interview with Dr. Tesla about his teleforce.
This death beam, Dr. Tesla said, will send concentrated beams of particles through the free air of such tremendous energy that they will bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles from a defending nation's border.
Dr. Tesla wasn't the only famous inventor talking about deadly beams of energy. The Italian scientist who invented the wireless telegraph, Guglielmo Marconi, also claimed to be working on a death ray, and German and Japanese scientists both tried to develop beam weapons during the Second World War. Of course, all these attempts failed, and it's tempting to look back and scoff at these people as delusional. But we've got to remember, the 1930s were a time of bewildering scientific advancement. In just a few decades, people had moved from a world of mailed letters and horse-drawn carts to a world of wireless radio, automobiles, airplanes. In a couple more decades, we'd have rockets blasting into space and atomic bombs threatening cities. In that context, death rays didn't seem like such a huge technological leap. Even if Victor Penny's death ray never existed, someone may have taken the rumours seriously enough to try and steal it. On June 20th, 1935, subscribers to the Auckland Star newspaper wrote into this headline.
Attacked. Cries for help. Radio experimenter man found semi-conscious.
The Auckland Star quoted a Mr. and Mrs. McWhorter who found the injured and concerned, said he was calling out for papers and pages and rambling about a sawn-off shotgun. It noted this attack didn't seem like an ordinary robbery. Victor Penny still had money in his pockets. A reporter went door to door asking neighbours what they thought had happened. What were these papers Victor Penny was yelling about?
The suggestion that Mr. Penny was robbed of valuable drawings or plans of a radio invention which he was about to patent was made in Takapuna this morning. It has been known for some time that Mr. Penny had been working on a new type of condenser microphone with a built-in preamplifier, of which he had great hopes of success.
The next day, June 21st, the Star printed even more dramatic rumours.
One report in circulation is that one of Mr. Penny's inventions is so revolutionary in its effect that it will be sought after by a foreign power, and that the reason high police officials are making secret inquiries in Auckland is that the whole affair has an international significance. This may be but a rumour, but those who have learned some of the facts are not inclined to discount it heavily. The fact that the police are still guarding Mr. Penny's laboratory gives good ground for the belief that there is much more in the matter than has so far been disclosed.
A big break in the story came about a week after the attack, when the Auckland Star interviewed Colonel William Holgate, Remember, he was the chair of the company where Victor Penny worked and also his former landlord.
Colonel Holgate said that he knew Penny had been experimenting with an invisible ray of the nature of the death ray, of which so much was recently heard in Europe. Penny's ray, he understood, could explode a box of matches 16 feet away from the apparatus he was experimenting with.
Then, Colonel Holgate told the Star something even more interesting. A few days before the attack, a mysterious man came to Colonel Holgate's house, asking the maid about the four mechanics who lived above his garage.
According to Colonel Holgate, the man was most anxious to know where he could find Penny. On being told that he no longer occupied a flat above the garage in Williard Street, the stranger asked where Penny was living. He was given an address at Napier Avenue, Takapuna. I am firmly convinced that last Wednesday's assault on Penny was definitely associated with one of Penny's inventions, concluded Colonel Holgate.
Up to this point, the police had kept their lips tightly sealed about anything related to Victor Penny's attack. But the interview with Colonel Holgate seems to have provoked the Commissioner of Police, Ward George Wallman, to respond. And, well, he essentially mocked the newspapers for printing all these sensational stories.
Really, this mystery is one of the best for some time. It's all such good copy coming as it does at this quiet season. I'm reluctant to say anything that it may spoil even this half-penny effort to drive away dull care. We've all heard of the Loch Ness Monster, but many reasonably well-balanced people venture to doubt its existence.
But as David McGill points out, while the police dismissed the rumours surrounding Victor Penny's attack, the central mystery was never resolved.
So who's the victim? We still don't know. Nobody's pushed up to it.
The police records relation to this assault cannot be found, so we don't know what lead the cops might have had. The most mundane explanation is this was just a random attack. Maybe someone tried to mug the victor, got scared and ran off without taking anything. But Colonel Holgate is convinced the attack came from someone trying to steal Victor's secret inventions, and that remains a possibility. Because when the papers wrote about shadowy foreign agents operating in Auckland, they were actually onto something. Around the same time that Victor was assaulted, Auckland police were becoming increasingly concerned about covert Nazi activity in the city.
German society in Auckland had been taken over by the Nazis. And they were taking down the names of every person of German origin, either to call them to the armed forces of Germany, or if they were Jews, of course, to put them somewhere else.
After the Second World War ended, the police wrote a report outlining their investigations of the Auckland German attack.
Members commenced the club's proceedings by saying Heil Hitler and giving the Nazi salute before a large framed portrait of Hitler.
The club had about 15 members in 1935, and that membership included some dedicated Nazis. So it's possible one of these people heard the rumours about Victor Penny's inventions and decided it was in Germany's interest to steal his plans. But there's reason to be sceptical. Because surely if the police suspected this assault on Takapuna was carried out by a Nazi agent, they would have mentioned it in their big report all about Auckland's Nazis. And Victor Penny's name doesn't appear once in the report. And again, if there was nothing particularly significant about the assault, why did the government take the extraordinary step of shipping Victor Penny off to Matthew Symes Island, seemingly to work on something top secret? In the absence of official documents, we can only really speculate. Everyone at the time seems to have latched onto this idea of him building a death ray. But funnily enough, even Penny doesn't think that's what his dad was doing. Even reckons his dad was working on something a lot of other people were working on at the time, especially the British.
They were in the process, like any number of other foreign governments, busily of trying to get railways involved.
As far back as the 1880s, scientists had realized that you could bounce radio waves off metal objects. As early as the 1910s and 20s, people were experimenting with the military applications of it, trying to detect aircraft and ships from very long distances. But here was a problem. It was relatively easy to use reflected radio waves to detect which direction an object was in. But it was extremely difficult to figure out how far away it was.
Radio waves travel speed through the air depending on the frequency. So if you want to do a ranging exercise to sort of work out the range between you and an approaching airplane, the frequency has to be rock solid. Otherwise, you imagine the old-fashioned pictures of air traffic controller, radar screen, the picture would balloon in and out, expand and contract, depending on whether someone left the door open or not.
What was needed was a way to stabilize the frequency.
And this was the work he was taken to Soames Island for. He tried very, very hard, all sorts of ingenious ways to get his circuit to stay on frequency. There was all sorts of bullshit stories put about what he was doing there to hide the fact that he was working on prototype radar, because this was highly top secret stuff.
I have to stress, this is only a theory from Evan. But if it is true, it wouldn't actually be anything but unusual. There are a lot of people all over the world beavering away with weird and wonderful radio experiments in the 1920s and 30s, taking a lot of self-taught lectures.
The ham community was abuzz with all the sorts of stuff. For instance, he was investigating being able to shut down the motor on a petrol car remotely, because this was one of the ideas floating around the ham radio community. And I think if I was the government, I'd be really concerned in the same way that the internet now is of concern, in that it allows all sorts of ideas to rocket around the ether, even ideas which are to the detriment of the country's security.
That's kind of a good analogy, isn't it? It's sort of like this sort of, open source hackers who go out and they might even know more about hacking than government stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To even Penny, this explains why his dad was taken to much use science.
We've got to ring fence what's going on here until we can work out what he knows and what he can do. And then there was a change of government and they just shut it all down.
For reasons we still don't fully understand, the incoming Labour government shut down Victor's experiments in February of 1936 and packed him off home to Takapuna. And the following year, Peter Fraser twisted him arm.
When we questioned the poor fellow, a child could have seen that there was nothing in it. You are tuned to Radio New Zealand. We are now closing on this frequency. To continue hearing us, please retune to 15720 kHz in the 19-meter band. Once again, retune now to 15720 kHz in the 19-meter band. This is New Zealand.